My aunt was a scientist at Chernobyl. She told me the reactor meltdown wasn't an accident. Chernobyl wasn't an accident, my aunt whispered, her fingers digging into my arm hard enough to leave bruises. We built it as a prison, and on April 26, 1986, something escaped. Those were the last words Irina Volkova spoke, before the machines started screaming and the nurses rushed in and her body went rigid on the hospital bed. I watched her eyes roll back, watched black veins spread across her face like cracks in porcelain, watched something dark leak from her nose and ears before the doctors shoved me out of the room. They pronounced her dead 17 minutes later. Heart failure, they said. Complications from radiation exposure decades ago. But I saw what they didn't see. I saw the way her left hand, the one she'd kept wrapped in bandages for 38 years, had finally come unwrapped in those final moments, and the skin underneath wasn't scarred or burned. It was crystallized, like her flesh had turned to glass. My name is Dmitry Volkov, and I'm writing this from a hotel room in Reykjavik because I don't know who else to trust anymore. 3 days ago, I was a journalism professor at Moscow State University, living a quiet life, keeping my head down after my investigative career got too dangerous and too many of my sources started disappearing. My Aunt Irina was the only family I had left after my parents died when I was 15. She raised me, paid for my education, encouraged my career even when it nearly got me killed, but she never talked about her own work. Never mentioned Chernobyl except to say she'd been there during the disaster and had been lucky to survive. I never pushed her on it because I could see the way her hands shook whenever the subject came up, the way her eyes would go distant and haunted. I thought it was PTSD from the radiation exposure, from watching colleagues die, from being part of the worst nuclear disaster in human history. I was wrong about all of it. The hospital called me at 2:47 in the morning to say my aunt had been admitted with acute respiratory failure. By the time I got there, she was already on a ventilator, her 73-year-old body fighting something the doctors couldn't identify. It's like her cells are breaking down at the molecular level, the attending physician told me, confusion written all over his face. I've never seen anything like it. It's almost as if she's been exposed to some kind of accelerated decay process. He kept using words like unprecedented and medically impossible, while my aunt lay there, barely conscious, her breathing getting shallower by the hour. I sat beside her bed for 6 hours, holding her good hand, the right one, watching her chest rise and fall with mechanical precision. Around 9 a.m., her eyes suddenly snapped open, completely lucid, and she grabbed my wrist with strength that shouldn't have been possible for someone in her condition. "Dmitri," she rasped, her voice like gravel. "Listen to me. I don't have much time. They're coming. They know I'm dying and they know I kept records." I leaned closer. "Who's coming?" "Aunt Irina, what are you talking about?" But she was already reaching under her pillow with her bandaged left hand, pulling out a small USB drive that she pressed into my palm. "Everything is on here. Photographs, documents, audio recordings from 1986. I hid copies in 3 locations. This is the only one left. The others, they found them. They burned my apartment last year. Made it look like an electrical fire. I barely got out. My blood went cold. The fire had been all over the news. The entire building had been destroyed. The official investigation concluded it was faulty wiring, an accident. My aunt had moved to a smaller apartment after that, told me she wanted to downsize. I'd believed her. "Who burned your apartment?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Who's looking for these files?" She pulled me even closer, so close I could smell the sickness on her breath. "The people who built Chernobyl. The ones who know what we really put in Reactor 4. They've been hunting down everyone who worked on the containment project, killing us one by one, making it look natural. Heart attacks, strokes, accidents. I'm the last one left, Dmitri, and now they're coming for the evidence." The machine started beeping faster. A nurse poked her head in, saw the readings, called for a doctor. My aunt's grip tightened. Reactor 4 was never meant to generate power. It was built as a prison, a cage. In 1961, a Soviet geological team found something in Siberia, frozen in the permafrost. Something that wasn't human. They couldn't destroy it, couldn't kill it, so they built Chernobyl to contain it, fed it constant radiation to keep it dormant. I stared at her, my mind refusing to process what she was saying. "Aunt Irina, the morphine. It's making you confused. You need to rest." "I'm not confused," she snapped, her eyes wild. "Listen to me. Someone sabotaged the reactor on April 26th, deliberately. They shut down the radiation field for 47 seconds. That's all it took. The thing woke up, broke out of containment, killed 14 workers in minutes before we could restart the field and blow the reactor to bury it. Everything you know about Chernobyl is a lie. The exclusion zone isn't to protect people from radiation. It's to keep people away from what's still buried under that concrete sarcophagus." The doctors rushed in then, pushed me aside, started working on her. I stood there clutching the USB drive, watching them try to save her, my aunt's words echoing in my head like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. She looked at me one more time, mouthed something I couldn't hear over the chaos. Then her body seized, the black veins appeared on her face, and she was gone. The hospital security escorted me out 20 minutes later. "Standard procedure," they said. "Give the family time to process. Come back tomorrow for the death certificate and personal effects." I walked out into the Moscow morning in a daze, the USB drive burning a hole in my pocket. I should have gone home. Should have taken a few days to grieve, to process, to figure out what to do with my aunt's deathbed confession. Instead, I went straight to my office at the university, locked the door, and plugged the drive into my laptop. What I found made me realize my aunt had been telling the truth, and that I was in more danger than I could possibly imagine. The drive contained 847 files, photographs, scanned documents, audio recordings, video footage, all of it classified at the highest levels of the Soviet government, all of it supposedly destroyed decades ago. I started with the photographs and immediately wished I hadn't. The first image showed a body, or what had once been a body. It was humanoid, roughly 8 feet tall, lying on a metal examination table in what looked like a medical facility. But everything about it was wrong. The proportions were off, the limbs too long, the torso too narrow. The skin, if you could call it that, was translucent, revealing structures underneath that didn't match any human anatomy I'd ever seen. There were too many ribs, the spine had too many vertebrae, and the skull, the skull was elongated and smooth, with no visible eye sockets or nasal cavity, just a face that looked like it had been sculpted from wax and then partially melted. The date stamp on the photo read February 17, 1961. The location stamp had been redacted, but someone had written in pen at the bottom, Sakha Republic, Site Omega, 400 milliliter depth. I scrolled to the next photo. Same body, different angle. This time I could see its hands, if they were hands. 6 fingers on each finger twice as long as a human's, ending in what looked like claws or talons that had been filed down. The next 20 photos documented the body from every angle, close-ups of the skin showing a cellular structure that looked more like crystal than organic tissue, X-rays revealing bones that were hollow and filled with some kind of fluid, a cross-section of what might have been its brain, preserved in a jar, showing neural pathways that branched in patterns I couldn't begin to understand. Then came the documents. The first was a memo dated March 3, 1961, from someone named Colonel Yevgeny Kozlov to the Soviet Ministry of Defense. It was in Russian, but my Russian was fluent enough to translate. The specimen retrieved from Site Omega has been transported to Facility 19 for examination. Initial analysis confirms this is not human. DNA sequencing shows 49 chromosomes, 17 more than Homo sapiens. Carbon dating of the ice surrounding the specimen suggests it has been frozen for approximately 50,000 years, plus or minus 3,000 years. Cause of death unknown. Recommend immediate classification at Level 5 secrecy. The next document, dated April 12, 1961, was even more disturbing. Specimen remains in perfect preservation despite thawing. No decomposition observed. Tissue samples show cellular activity despite clinical death. Recommend continued observation. I scrolled faster now, my heart pounding. May 1961. Cellular regeneration confirmed. Dead tissue is rebuilding itself at microscopic level. Estimated full regeneration in 12 to 15 years if process continues at current rate. August 1961. Specimen has begun to show signs of autonomous nervous system activity. Heartbeat detected, 3 beats per minute. Recommend immediate consultation with Theoretical Physics Division. November 1961. Emergency containment procedures initiated. Specimen attempted to open eyes during examination. Sedation protocols ineffective. Recommend radiation exposure to halt regeneration process. That's where the trail went cold for several years. The next document was dated January 1970, and it was marked with a red stamp. Authorized eyes only, Politburo level. Project Kletka approved. Construction of specialized containment facility to begin immediately. Location, northern Ukraine, Pripyat region. Cover story, civilian nuclear power plant. Actual function, radiation-based stasis chamber for specimen. Estimated completion, 1977. Estimated operational date, 1983. Kletka, the Russian word for cage. I felt sick. My aunt had been telling the truth. Chernobyl wasn't a power plant. It was a prison. I kept reading, finding construction documents, blueprints, budget allocations. The entire Chernobyl facility had been designed with Reactor 4 at its center, and Reactor 4 had been designed with a single purpose: generate enough radiation to keep something dormant. The blueprints showed a specialized containment chamber deep beneath the reactor core, accessible only through a series of sealed corridors that required 6 different authorization codes to open. The chamber itself was lined with lead and concrete 3 meters thick, with cooling systems that could maintain temperatures of minus 40 degrees Celsius and radiation emitters that could flood the space with enough gamma rays to kill any living thing instantly. The audio files were next. I clicked on the first one, dated April 26, 1986, timestamp 01.2340. Static, then voices speaking Russian, panicked and overlapping. Control room, this is containment level 5. We have unauthorized access to corridor 12. I repeat, unauthorized access. Someone has bypassed the security protocols. A different voice, calmer. Identify yourself. This is Dr. Irina Volkova. Someone is trying to reach the specimen chamber. I can see them on the security feed. They're overriding the door locks one by one. My blood froze. That was my aunt's voice, decades younger, but unmistakable. Seal the corridor, the calm voice ordered. Initiate emergency lockdown. I'm trying. The system isn't responding. They've hacked the control network. Oh God, they're at the final door. They're entering the chamber. An alarm started blaring in the background, deafening even through the recording. The calm voice again. Not calm anymore. Volkova, report. What's happening? The radiation field is dropping. Someone's shut down the emitters. The temperature is rising. The specimen, it's moving. A sound then, something that made my skin crawl. It wasn't mechanical, wasn't human. It was a vibration, a resonance that seemed to bypass my ears and go straight into my brain. My aunt screaming. Multiple people screaming. Gunfire. More of that resonance. So loud now it distorted the recording. Then silence. After 10 seconds, the calm voice came back. All personnel evacuate Reactor 4 immediately. Initiate protocol sarcophagus. We're blowing the reactor. But the specimen is awake, and we can't put it back to sleep. Our only option is to bury it. Clear the building now. The recording ended. I sat there, my hands shaking, trying to process what I'd just heard. Someone had deliberately sabotaged Chernobyl, had intentionally woken up whatever was in that chamber. But why? The next audio file was dated 3 hours later, 04:47:32. Voices speaking in hushed tones, the sound of machinery in the background. Dr. Volkova, this is Colonel Dmitry Belyakov. I need you to tell me exactly what you saw in that chamber. My aunt's voice, hoarse and traumatized. I saw it stand up. I saw it open its eyes. They weren't eyes, Colonel. They were, I don't know how to describe it. Like looking into deep water. Like looking at the night sky. Like looking at nothing and everything at the same time. How many casualties? 14 confirmed dead in the chamber. It killed them in seconds. Just touched them and they came apart. Their bodies turned to ash. Then it started moving toward the corridor. We managed to restart the radiation emitters at maximum output. That stopped it long enough for us to evacuate. But Colonel, the radiation levels required to immobilize it, we can't sustain that. The reactor can't handle it. It's going to melt down within the hour. That's acceptable, the Colonel said. We have charges planted throughout the structure. We're bringing down the entire building on top of it. 500,000 tons of concrete and steel should be sufficient to contain it until we can implement a permanent solution. And if it's not sufficient? My aunt's voice cracked. Then God help us all. Another alarm started blaring. Someone shouted in the background about core temperature reaching critical levels. The recording cut off. I clicked the next file. This one was dated 2 days later, April 28, 1986. A different voice this time. Older, authoritative. This is General Secretary Gorbachev speaking. I have been briefed on the Chernobyl incident and the nature of what was contained in Reactor 4. I want to make one thing absolutely clear to everyone involved in this situation. The official story is a reactor malfunction due to safety test gone wrong. Nothing more. The specimen, if it still exists under the rubble, is to remain classified at the highest level. No mention of Site Omega, no mention of Project Kletka, no mention of the sabotage. Is that understood? Multiple voices responded. Yes, General Secretary. Good. Now, someone explain to me how our security was compromised. How did an unauthorized individual gain access to 6 separate security doors and disable our containment systems? A pause. Then Colonel Belyakov's voice. We believe it was an inside job, sir. Someone with high-level clearance. We're reviewing access logs now. But General Secretary, whoever did this, they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the containment protocols, knew how to bypass them. This was professional. This was planned. Find them, Gorbachev said, his voice cold. And when you do, they disappear. No trial, no publicity, just gone. Yes, sir. The recording ended. I leaned back in my chair, my mind reeling. Someone inside the Chernobyl operation had intentionally released that thing, had caused the disaster that killed thousands of people and contaminated an entire region. But who and why? The video files were in a separate folder. I clicked on the first one, and my laptop screen filled with grainy black and white footage from a security camera. The timestamp read, April 26, 1986, 01-1903. The video showed a long corridor, sterile and industrial, lit by fluorescent lights. At the far end was a massive steel door with warning symbols painted on it. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a figure entered the frame, wearing a full hazmat suit and carrying what looked like a laptop computer. They walked straight to the door and began typing on a keypad beside it. The door's locks disengaged with visible mechanical precision. The figure pulled the door open and stepped through. The camera angle switched, showing the interior of the containment chamber. It was enormous, at least 40 meters across, the walls lined with lead panels and cooling pipes. In the center was a transparent cylinder, maybe 3 meters in diameter and 10 meters tall, filled with some kind of liquid. And suspended in the liquid was the creature from the photographs, its 2 long limbs floating in the fluid, its eyeless face pointed toward the ceiling. The figure in the hazmat suit approached a control panel on the wall and began typing rapidly. Lights on the panel changed from green to red. The liquid in the cylinder began to drain, and then, as the fluid level dropped below the creature's head, it moved, just a twitch at first, one of those 2 long fingers curling. Then its head tilted downward, slowly, until it was facing the figure at the control panel. The person in the hazmat suit stepped back, seemed to realize what they'd done, what they'd woken up, and started running toward the door. Too late. The creature's eyes opened. I say eyes, but they weren't anything like human eyes. They were black voids, empty spaces in its face that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And when those voids focused on the person in the hazmat suit, the person stopped running, just froze in place, like they'd been paralyzed. The creature reached out with one impossibly long arm and touched the person's shoulder through the suit. For a second, nothing happened. Then the person started convulsing. The hazmat suit began to smoke, and then the person just collapsed into ash, the suit crumpling around nothing. The video cut off. I sat there, staring at the blank screen, trying to process what I'd just witnessed. That thing had killed someone with a touch, had reduced a human being to ash in seconds, and my aunt had been there when it woke up, had watched it kill 14 people, had somehow survived and spent the next 38 years keeping that secret. The remaining files were more of the same. Incident reports detailing the explosion, the evacuation, the containment efforts, casualty lists with hundreds of names, most of them marked radiation exposure, but a few marked with a different designation: direct contact, immediate termination. Medical records showing victims with the same black veins my aunt had developed, the same cellular crystallization. And at the bottom of the folder, a single document dated December 15th, 2023, just 3 months ago. It was a scanned newspaper article from a Russian scientific journal reporting on a discovery in Antarctica. A Chinese research team had found something while drilling through the ice sheet near Vostok Station, something that looked like a structure, something buried 2 miles down, in ice that was over 400,000 years old. The article was accompanied by a blurry photograph taken through layers of ice. I had to zoom in to see the details, but when I did, my blood turned cold. It was another one, another creature, perfectly preserved, suspended in ancient ice, bigger than the one from Siberia. And according to the article, the Chinese government had immediately classified the entire site, evacuated the research team, and begun drilling operations to extract the specimen. My aunt's final words echoed in my head. They found another one, in Antarctica, and this one is awake. I checked the date of the article again, 3 months ago, which meant right now, at this very moment, there was a second creature somewhere in the world, extracted from the ice, possibly being contained, possibly not. I needed to get this information out, needed to publish it, send it to every news outlet I could think of, make sure the world knew what had happened at Chernobyl and what was happening now. But first, I needed to disappear, because if people had killed to keep this secret for 38 years, they wouldn't hesitate to kill me too. I copied all the files from the USB drive to an encrypted cloud server, then copied them again to 3 separate locations using services based in different countries. Then I destroyed the USB drive itself, crushed it with a hammer and flushed the pieces down the toilet. Not subtle, but effective. I packed a bag with clothes, cash, and my passport, checked flights on my phone. The earliest flight I could catch to somewhere outside Russian jurisdiction was a red-eye to Iceland, departing in 4 hours. I booked it, started to leave my office, then stopped. There was one more thing I needed to do. I pulled up my university email and sent a message to my department head, saying I was taking emergency leave due to a family death. Then I sent a second email, this one to 5 journalists I'd worked with during my investigative days, people I trusted. The message was simple. I have evidence of a massive government cover-up related to Chernobyl. If anything happens to me, check the cloud server at this address. Password is my mother's maiden name, Dmitry Volkov. I hit send and left my office for the last time. The airport was a nightmare. I kept expecting security to pull me aside, kept waiting for someone to recognize me, to know that I had information that could bring down governments. But nothing happened. I cleared security, boarded the plane, found my seat. Only when we were actually in the air, Moscow disappearing below us, did I allow myself to breathe. I made it. I was out. I pulled out my laptop, opened the encrypted files again, started organizing everything into a coherent narrative. Who, what, when, where, why, how, the basic framework of any investigative story. The flight was 9 hours. I had time. I was 2 hours into writing when my laptop screen flickered, just for a second. Then the files started closing on their own. One by one, documents disappearing, folders emptying themselves. I frantically tried to stop it, tried to disconnect from the plane's Wi-Fi, but it was too late. Within 30 seconds, every file was gone. Deleted. I stared at the blank desktop, feeling my heart sink. They'd found me. Somehow they'd tracked my laptop, accessed it remotely, wiped everything. But I still had the cloud backups. They couldn't have found all of those. I logged into the first cloud server. Empty. The files had been deleted 6 minutes ago. The second server. Empty. Deleted 4 minutes ago. The third, also empty. Someone was systematically hunting down every copy of my aunt's evidence and destroying it. Someone with resources far beyond what I'd imagined. I checked my email, thinking maybe I could at least warn the journalists I'd contacted, but my email account had been suspended. Suspicious activity detected. Account locked for security reasons. Everything was gone. All the evidence. All the proof. The only thing left was my memory, and the knowledge that I'd never be able to prove any of it. I spent the rest of the flight in a state of numb shock, trying to figure out what to do next. When we landed in Reykjavik at 6 a.m. local time, I went straight to a hotel and paid cash for a room. No credit cards, no paper trail. I needed time to think, needed to figure out if there was any way to salvage this, any way to get the truth out without evidence. That's when my phone rang. I'd turned it off during the flight, left it off at the airport. I was certain I'd turned it off, but it was ringing anyway. The screen lit up with a blocked number. I answered, my hand shaking. A voice spoke, male, middle-aged, speaking Russian with a Moscow accent. Mr. Volkov, we need to talk. Who is this? I demanded. My name is Colonel Alexei Sokolov. I'm the current director of the program that managed Project Kletka. I'm the reason all your files have been deleted, and I'm calling to offer you a choice. I said nothing, waiting. You have two options, Sokolov continued. Option 1, you go public with what you know. You tell your story to anyone who will listen. You become a conspiracy theorist, a crank, a man obsessed with a dead ant's delusions. Without evidence, no one will believe you. You'll be discredited, possibly institutionalized, definitely silenced, and we'll make sure you never work as a journalist again. And option 2? Option 2, you stay quiet. You mourn your aunt. You go home. You resume your teaching career. And in exchange, we leave you alone. We don't touch you. We don't touch anyone you care about. You live a long, peaceful life, and the secret stays buried where it belongs. I thought about my aunt, about the terror she'd lived with for 38 years, about the way she died, alone, her body breaking down at the molecular level. Why didn't you just kill me? I asked. Like you killed everyone else who knew about this? Sokolov sighed. Because your aunt was smart. She set up dead man switches, multiple layers of contingency. If you die or disappear, certain files get automatically released to media outlets worldwide. We've disabled most of them, but not all. We're not certain we've found them all, and we'd rather not take the risk. That meant I still had leverage. My aunt had protected me even from beyond the grave. What about Antarctica? I asked. What about the second specimen? A long pause. Then, that's no longer your concern, Mr. Volkov. But I will tell you this, because I think you deserve to know. The Chinese government extracted the specimen 3 months ago. They attempted to contain it using the same protocols we developed for Chernobyl. It didn't work. The specimen was awake when they found it. It had been awake for months, possibly years, slowly melting its way through the ice. By the time they realized what they were dealing with, it was too late. The entire research station was destroyed. 97 people dead, and the specimen is gone. We don't know where it is. We don't know what it's doing, but we know it's somewhere in the southern hemisphere, moving, learning, adapting. I felt the room spin. You're telling me there's an active specimen loose right now, and you're worried about me staying quiet? We're telling you that the world has much bigger problems than one journalist with a story no one will believe. The specimen in Antarctica is a crisis we're managing at the highest international levels. The Americans know, the Chinese know, the Russians know. We're working together, for the first time in decades, because we understand that this threat transcends national boundaries. But we can't fight it if we're also fighting public panic, mass hysteria, the complete breakdown of social order that would follow if people knew what was really out there. People deserve to know, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. Do they? Sokolov asked. What would happen if you published this story tomorrow? What would happen if 8 billion people learned that there are creatures buried in the ice, creatures that predate human civilization, creatures that we can't kill or control? What would happen to society? To the economy? To civilization itself? Would it help us fight the Antarctic specimen? Or would it just create more chaos? I had no answer to that, because he was right. Even if I had the evidence, even if I could prove everything, releasing it would cause global panic, and it wouldn't help stop whatever was out there. So I'm supposed to just stay quiet, I said bitterly. Let you people handle it. Trust that you know what you're doing. Not trust, Sokolov said, but accept that some secrets are kept not to protect the powerful, but to protect everyone. Your aunt understood that. She spent 38 years keeping quiet, not because she was afraid for herself, but because she knew what would happen if the truth got out. She died keeping that secret. Don't let her sacrifice be for nothing. He hung up before I could respond. I sat there in that hotel room for hours, staring at the wall, trying to decide what to do. I thought about my aunt's glass hand, about the black veins on her face, about the way she'd looked at me in those final moments. She'd given me the truth, but she'd also given me a choice. Speak and doom myself to being dismissed as a conspiracy theorist, or stay silent and live with the knowledge that somewhere in the world, something ancient and deadly was loose, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. In the end, I chose silence. Not because I trusted Sokolov or the shadowy organization he represented, but because I understood that some truths are too dangerous to share, that sometimes the only responsible thing to do is to keep the secret and hope that the people fighting in the shadows succeed. I flew back to Moscow 3 days later, resumed my teaching position, attended my aunt's funeral, which was small and quiet, just a handful of colleagues from her years at the university, all of them believing she'd been a simple physicist who'd survived Chernobyl through luck. No one mentioned the glass hand. No one asked questions. I went back to my life, outwardly normal, inwardly haunted by what I knew. And every night, I checked the news for reports from Antarctica, for unexplained disasters in the southern hemisphere, for signs that the specimen has been found or stopped or contained. So far, nothing, which either means the International Task Force is succeeding, or that the creature is smart enough to stay hidden while it does whatever it's doing down there in the frozen darkness. I still have the files, or at least one copy that I managed to hide before they wiped everything. It's on an encrypted drive buried in a location I won't disclose, set to auto-release if I don't access it every 30 days. My life insurance policy. My assurance that if they decide I'm too much of a risk, the truth will come out anyway, but I hope it never does. Because my aunt was right. Some things should stay buried. Some secrets are too terrible to share. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to carry the weight of terrible knowledge alone, in silence, protecting the world from a truth it isn't ready for. 6 months after my aunt's death, I received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single photograph, dated 1986, showing my aunt in her Chernobyl uniform, standing with a group of other scientists. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, "She saved us all. Remember her sacrifice." I keep that photograph on my desk now, a reminder of the aunt who raised me, who protected me even in death, who spent her entire life carrying a burden she could never share. And I wait, hoping that whatever is out there in Antarctica stays hidden, stays contained, stays buried in the ice where it belongs, because if it doesn't, the world will learn the truth the hard way, and God help us all when that day comes.